Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is a screencast-o-matic presentation and recording for the part of the lesson that has us looking at Buddhism, the 11 common misunderstandings and mistakes that people might have when they perceive Buddhism. So let's go ahead and get started. And before we dive in, please remember that your task here is to fill out the analysis questions on the Google Doc. Please remember that you can replay any part of this presentation for repetition, detail, or clarity later on. Here's the introduction. So people believe many things about Buddhism that simply just are incorrect. They think Buddhists want to get enlightened so they can be blissed out all the time, but if something bad happens to you, it's because of something you did in a past life. Everybody knows that Buddhists have to be vegetarians. Unfortunately, much of what everybody knows about Buddhism isn't true. Explore these common but mistaken ideas many people in the West have about Buddhism in the East. Let's start with number 1. Buddhism teaches that nothing exists. Many diatribes are written opposing the Buddhist teaching that nothing exists. If nothing exists, the writers ask, who is it that imagines something does exist? However, Buddhism does not teach that nothing exists. It challenges our understanding of how things exist. It teaches that things and phenomena have no intrinsic existence. But Buddhism does not teach there is no existence at all. That nothing exists folklore mostly comes from a misunderstanding of the teaching of the Anatta and its Mahayana extension, Shunyata. But these are not doctrines of non-existence. Rather, they teach that we understand existence in a limited, one-sided way. Number 2 here is that Buddhism teaches we're all one. Everyone's heard the joke about what the Buddhist monk said to a hot dog vendor, make me one of everything, or one with everything. Doesn't Buddhism teach that we are one with everything? In the Mahayana Sutta, the Buddha taught that it was incorrect to say that the self is finite. But it is also incorrect to say that the self is infinite. In this sutra, the Buddha taught us not to hold on to views about whether the self is this or that. We fall into the idea that we individuals are competent parts of one thing, or that our individual self is false and only infinite self, that is, everything is true. Understanding the self requires going beyond concepts and ideas. Number 3, Buddhists believe in reincarnation. So if you define reincarnation as the transmigration of one soul into a new body after the old body dies, then no, the Buddha did not teach doctrine of reincarnation. For one thing, he taught that there was no soul to transmigrate. However, there is a Buddhist doctrine of rebirth. According to this doctrine, it is the energy or conditioning created by one life that is reborn into another, not a soul. The person who dies here is reborn elsewhere is neither the same person nor another. Theravada scholar Walpola Rugla wrote, however, you don't have to believe in rebirth to be a Buddhist. Many Buddhists are agnostic on the matter of rebirth. Number 4 here is Buddhists are supposed to be vegetarians. Yes, some scholars of Buddhism do insist on vegetarianism, and I believe that all schools encourage it, but in most schools of Buddhism, vegetarianism is a personal choice, not a commandment. The earliest Buddhist scriptures suggest the historical Buddha himself was not a vegetarian. The first order of the monks begged for their food, and the rule was that if a monk was given meat, he was required to eat it unless he knew that the animal was slaughtered specifically to feed monks. Number 5 here is karma is fate. The word karma means action, not fate. In Buddhism, karma is an energy created by willful action through thoughts, words, and deeds. We are all creating karma every minute, and karma we create affects us every minute. It's common to think of my karma as something you did in your last life that seals your fate in this life, but that's not the Buddhist understanding. Karma is action, not a result. The future is not set in stone. You can change the course of your life right now by changing your vocational or volitional acts in self-destructive patterns. Number 6 here is that karma punishes people who deserve it. Karma is not a cosmic system of justice and retribution. There is no unseen judge pulling the strings of karma to punish wrongdoers. Karma is as impersonal as gravity. What goes up must come down. What you do is what happens to you. Karma is not only the only force that causes things to happen in the world. If a terrible flood wipes out a community, don't assume karma somehow brought about a flood that people in one community deserve to be punished for something. Unfortunate events can happen to anybody, even the most righteous. That said, karma is a strong force that could result in a generally happy life or a generally miserable one. Number 7 is that enlightenment is being blissed out all the time. People imagine that getting enlightened is like flipping a happy switch, and that one goes from being ignorant and miserable to being blissful and serene in one big technicolor aha moment. The Sanskrit word often translated as enlightenment actually means awakening. Most people awaken gradually, often imperceptibly, over a long period of time, or they awaken through a series of opening experiences, each one revolving or revealing just a little more, but not the whole picture. Even the most awkward teachers, or awakened teachers, are not floating around in a cloud of bliss. They still live in the world, ride on buses, catch cold, and run out of coffee sometimes too. Number 8. Buddhism teaches that we're supposed to suffer. The idea comes from a misreading of the First Noble Truth, often translated life is suffering. People read that and think Buddhism teaches that life is always miserable, and I don't agree. The problem is that the Buddha, who didn't speak English, didn't use the English word suffering. In the U.S. scriptures, we read that he said life is dukkha, and dukkha is a Pali word that contains many meanings. It can mean ordinary suffering, but can also mean refer to anything that is temporary, incomplete, or conditioned by other things. So even joy and bliss are dukkha because they come and go. Some translators use stressful and unsatisfactory in a place of suffering for dukkha. Number 9 is Buddhism is not a religion. Buddhism is not a religion, it's a philosophy, or sometimes it's a science of mind. Well, yes, it's a philosophy, it's a science of mind if you use the word science in a very broad sense, but it's also a religion. Of course, a lot depends on how you define religion, I guess, but people whose primary experience with religion tend to define religion in a way that requires belief in gods and supernatural beings. That is a limited view. So even though Buddhism does not require belief in God, most schools in Buddhism are highly mystical, which puts it outside the bounds of simple philosophy. Number 10 is that Buddhists worship the Buddha. The historical Buddha is considered to have been a human being who realized enlightenment through his own efforts. Buddhism also is non-theistic. The Buddha did not specifically teach there were no gods, just that believing in gods was not useful to realizing enlightenment. Buddha also represents the enlightenment itself and also Buddha nature, the essential nature of all beings. The iconic image of the Buddha and other enlightened beings are objects of devotion and reverence, but not as gods. And last, but certainly not least, is number 11. Buddhists avoid attachments, so they can't have relationships. When people hear that Buddhist practice of non-attachment, they sometimes assume that it means Buddhists can't form relationships with people, but that's not what it means. At the basis of attachment is another self-dichotomy, a self to attach, and another attached to. We attach to things out of a sense of incompleteness and neediness. But Buddhism teaches the self-other dichotomy is an illusion, that ultimately nothing is separate. When one intimately realizes this, there's no need for attachment. But that doesn't mean Buddhists can't be in close and loving relationships. So as you guys can see, those are some of the popular misconceptions that people might have of Buddhists and, of course, Buddhism in general. Hopefully, as you go throughout this lesson, you'll understand even more about what Buddhism actually really is and how it actually plays a role in our everyday lives, even as a global society. Thank you very much for tuning in, and good luck with completing the rest of the lesson.